It is 6 o'clock. I will call this July 5th council work session to order. And Ms. McKagan, you give us a roll call, please.
Mrs. Amos,
Here.
Mr. Reed,
Here.
Mr. Dwyer,
Here.
Mr. Parrott, Mr. Yolen,
Here.
Mr. Hunter, Mr. Hardy.
Here.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda, or is there any amendments?
I make a motion, we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it. Do we have anybody who needs to make a declaration of personal interest at this time? Not hearing anyone, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the introduction of a new Farmville Police Department officer. Chief Ellington, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council, town manager. It's my pleasure to introduce our newest officer, Mr. William Norman. You can call him Billy if you like. William was born and raised in Daytona, Florida. He graduated from high school in Port Charlotte, Florida. He then worked for a land development company for 2 years. And he's always had a passion to become a police officer. He also wanted to always move back here to his family farm, which is located in Cumberland County. So he began surfing the web, and he discovered at the time that we had openings for dispatchers here at the police department. So I'm gonna tell you a little story how this all happened, because I find it pretty ironic. One Friday afternoon, late that afternoon, had actually stayed a little bit later than I normally do. And then as I was getting ready to leave the office, I got up and was walking to the door, and the phone rang. So I went back and I looked at the caller ID, and I saw it was a Florida number. I said, man, that's another one of them salesmen. So I went over and I went to grab the phone, and I went back and I said, I'm gonna see who it is. Farmville Police Department. And on the other end, lo and behold, was Mr. William Norman. And the way he introduced himself to me, I was like, well, I'm gonna sit down and talk to this guy. He said, I noticed that you have a position open with the department for dispatcher, and I'd just like to know a little bit more about it. And he said, I've always had a passion to become a police officer. Long story short, we sat there and we had the best conversation, and the more I talked to this gentleman, the more I think he's got potential. So at that very moment, we didn't have a police officer position available right then. So I told him, I said, if you want to be a dispatcher, that's the way I started. And I said, it's a great experience, so go online, fill the application out, and send it to me. We ended the conversation. Next Monday when I came back in, application was in my email. I said, wow, this is impressive. So we talked several times, and within the next week, I think it was, lo and behold, we had a position come available. So I called him back and I said, William, I said, you told me that you really want to be a police officer. I said, how old are you? He said, well, I'm not but 20 years old. He said, but I will be 21 in February of this year. So I said, well, that's fine. You qualify. So I said, would you like to be a police officer with us? He said, absolutely. So again, long story short, he filled out an application. He came in, he tested, he blew it out the water. He did his interview, did exceptionally well. And June the 15th, he graduated from the 101st Basic Academy in Lynchburg. Just something about this guy that I really liked and admired, the way he presented himself. I think he's going to be a great asset to this department. Welcome, William Norman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and welcome, William. We had a good conversation about fishing down in Florida, which is one of my favorite conversations, so I appreciate having another fishing buddy in town. I'll be calling you up. We'll have to hit some of those ponds out. Welcome, and as I said earlier, you couldn't ask for a better crew to join. our outfit here in the police department is excellent, and we thank you and for signing up to join them. All right, next item on the agenda is the finance report. Ms. Julie Moore, are you going to share once again the good news? You're not going to?
No, I'm gonna leave that to
You're going to leave that to Scott?
Yes.
All right.
All right, so you guys got the May reports, and if you look at them, you can tell that total revenue should be about 92% of where the budget is. And when you exclude things like we talked about before, like the bond payment, then we're right on track there. And then when we look at total revenue to prior year, again, we're up, and that's due to projects at the airport, so we're getting grant income in, and then the sale of the golf course. For expenses, we're below the 92%, so that's a positive. That means that the department heads are keeping a watch on their budgets and they're not overspending. But I would like to give a little heads up that probably in the next month or so, we'll be coming back to you after we're trying to wrap up year end, because there will be things that'll probably go over, and so we'll have to ask you to allow us to move things from like one department to another department. It's just a standard thing that I think we do every year, but I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And then when you look at prior year versus current year, I have all the explanations in the packet. I mean, there was no big changes this month, no big purchases that I want to point out. So it's all pretty similar to in the past. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, so then the next thing, because y'all know I like to throw other things in there. You're going to get a resolution next week, and I apologize that you didn't get it this week to review. I just didn't get it in time to send it in. But it's for you guys giving Scott permission to sign the loan documents. When you adopted the budget, you also, in there, we had loan proceeds and then payments for 4 police cars and a leaf truck that we're going to finance this year. And so this is just granting him permission to sign all the paperwork for it. And it's going to be a 3-year term, and the interest rate was 3.65, which is really good because that's less than what we're earning. So does anybody have any questions? Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Mrs. Moore. All right. Next item on the agenda is the proposed resolution number 2023-0701, which is to rezone approximately 31 acres from R1 to R2 in the 300 block of Marywood Farm Road. Ashley, are you speaking to this, Miss?
Good evening. The request is to rezone approximately 31 acres from R1 low-density residential to R2 medium-density residential. The area is located in a 300 block of Marywood Farm Road and consists of 3 parcels. The zoning ordinance defines the R1 low-density residential district as one that should provide a suitable environment for families who desire quiet, spacious home sites with the amenities of suburban living, without fear of encroachment of dissimilar uses. The R2 medium-density district should provide a suitable environment for a mix of housing types located in closer proximity to shopping and employment centers. The proposed area is adjacent to the Walmart Shopping Center. The future land use map of the comprehensive plan shows this area as low-density residential, which would allow for a density up to 4 units per acre. The proposed amendment to the future land use map would allow for moderate density residential in this area, and this would allow up to 10 units per acre. The existing land use map of the comprehensive plan shows this area as being vacant. The amendment to the existing land use map would change this area to residential. Included in the staff report is a memorandum from Mitch Bowser with VHB that says they have done preliminary work of locating water and sewer lines, but have not completed an analysis to determine if the water and sewer mains have the capacity for the new development, nor have they completed a physical feasibility study for connecting to the utilities identified. The developer will work with Public Works on the availability of water and sewer for their project. VHB has also completed a high-level summary of the potential traffic impacts for this area. A letter from Chuck Conran and Nancy Carr from VHB has been submitted to council members with the staff report. From their analysis, the existing South Main Street access intersection should have the capacity to accommodate the development. This site is not located in an overlay district, floodplain, or other protected area and is currently mostly wooded. Staff findings are that this application appears to meet the standards of review for a rezoning set forth in Section 29-14D1 of the Town Zoning Ordinance. The staff recommends approval of the proposed rezoning and amendments to the official zoning map future land use map, and existing land use map. The Planning Commission recommended to Town Council approval of the rezoning with a vote of 6-1. I can try to answer any questions about the rezoning at this time.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Austin at this time regarding the rezoning? Now is the time.
Quick question. Going from R1 to R2, increasing the density, if I understand it from the Planning Commission meeting, there was no intention to go up in the numbers of suggested housing developments, right? From 140, 150. But going to R2 allows a developer to go up to 10 units per acre, which I think equates to 310 units. Is that correct?
That would be the math, yes.
Okay, and if they did go up to 310 units, what do we do with that traffic report dealing with the intersections that they would be exiting and interesting from? If those reports are based on the 140 to 150 number, when do we get the numbers or the effect that it's going to happen if they go up to 310 units?
So the developer would have to come back for a subdivision approval from Town Council, and at that point, we would require full analysis.
Okay, that would be after we went from R1 to R2? So they would technically be allowed, at that point, we can suggest that maybe 310 units might be not applicable to that zoning area or something like that. Is that where we're heading? I'm just trying to see what we're opening the door to here in the future.
So anything more than 140, is that what you're saying? It would have to come back, and is that his threshold at the moment?
No matter what, they have to come back before Town Council with the subdivision plan.
And what can Town Council do at that point?
You can either approve the subdivision plan or deny it.
Fair enough.
I'm kind of with you on that, and I noticed in the pictures that it's kind of connecting, it's kind of like the one road just kind of disappears, and there's a part of a parking lot. It's like it's connected to another piece that he has already got approved, which, you know, is going to increase traffic in that spot if it ever gets built. The exit, the ingress egress right there beside Benchmark, that was one of my concerns, was that's going to be greatly increase that. And it's already, I know there was a lot of issue with that in the first place when that one was approved. So I don't, you know, that's where I have questions about that as well. And I don't know whether that's for Scott or for you or for, you know, Harper and Associates. And I have other questions for that to be brought up, not necessarily with you, but just general questions about all of it.
I would just say one of your questions, Adam, and Mr. Yolen and Mr. Hardy, is that it probably would be better for you to ask the applicant that during the public hearing process next week. The applicant gets the chance to propose their product to you, and for them to answer any of those questions that you have for them at that time, or their consultant, if they have one with them or not. And you may hear some other questions or concerns from the public hearing piece as well. So tonight we just wanted to share with you the basics of what we have reviewed so far, what the Planning Commission's recommendation was, and the vote on that. But as far as you know, more of the details that you may have for them, I think that next week is a great time for the developer to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Davis.
If I remember correctly, the subdivision piece does not go back to Planning Commission. It just comes straight to council, correct?
Correct.
Do we have any additional questions concerning this?
I'm assuming the water and sewer is based off, like Adam said, the 140, 150 number for the premise of beginning the project. But if it does escalate, then it will have to be addressed again?
They did not complete a full study, just the location of the utilities.
You don't find many developers putting that much money, cost into a project at a preliminary stage unless they know that they can do the project or not. I mean, a full water and sewer study and a traffic impact study is a little more costly.
I guess the question is that if they wanted to do, and we'll find this out next week, of course, 140 to 150 units, they are legally allowed to do that at this point. And the water main and the features and the studies they've done so far with traffic and sewer and things like that applies towards that 140, 150 units and everything. So they're asking specifically to get to a R2 status and have the ability to do more than 140, 150. And that means, when do we get the information to determine whether that's even feasible?
Yeah, I think you'll hear from them the same probably you heard at the Planning Commission level. I don't think their intention is to get to the highest density they can. The main point of what I understand from this is that their main goal to go to R2 is for the sole fact of smaller lot sizes for single-family homes, and also to have diverse housing in that development of townhomes mixed in with single-family homes, which you cannot have in R1. That's the main premise of rezoning, and I think that's what the applicant will tell you next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was my impression watching the planning commission, because I think Mr. Weiss had a few questions concerning that as well, and it seemed to be all about not so much how much can we slam on there, because there are some geographical sort of boundaries that I think, limitations as far as steep inclines and ditches that are going to prevent them from being as dense as 300. And will continue to provide a buffer on that back end from any encroachment. But yeah, I suspect there will be similar folks from that neighborhood show up at the public hearing next week. Do you have any other questions for Ms. Austin? All right, not hearing any. Thank you. Next discussion is proposed ordinance number 225 to provide a gift of $350,000 to the Farmville Industrial Development Authority to provide loans to entities for economic development in the Main Street corridor. Mr. Davis, are you speaking to this?
Yes, sir. This is an item where we've been in conversation with a group that is interested in rehabilitating some buildings on Main Street. And so we're asking council to gift $350,000 that would come from the proceeds of the sale of the golf course to the IDA, so that they could decide whether they want to provide a loan or grant, or however they we propose a loan going into this. Obviously, that's how it's written in this gift. Is that they would loan an entity funds so that they could rehabilitate and do some economic development on Main Street corridor.
Do you have any questions from council on this?
So we cannot specify a loan. We might request that, but ultimately that's their call.
I mean, you are saying that it's to provide for loans and economic development for the Main Street corridor, so you can do, that's what this ordinance is for.
Okay. You
can't set the loan terms.
Okay. We can set a
The
loan.
IDA has to, that's their responsibility.
And this is kind of the functioning purpose of an IDA in most localities, correct? Is an avenue by which you can gift to reinvest in your downtown in particular here in this case.
Yeah, well, I mean, the ultimate goal is that you assist in economic development, and the return on that money is more viability, and we see that in real estate taxes, sales taxes, food taxes, whatever that may be. So the long-term benefit is much greater than the short-term. Short-term, if I can get my words out correctly.
All right. Any other discussion regarding taking money from the sale of the golf course and then trying to reinvest it downtown? Now, here in a next discussion, which we joked about the possibility that this was going to come back up, and here we are. Amending the ABM Building Solutions contract for more data on water usage. Mr. Davis?
Yeah, we've been working with ABM. They'll be here next week to give you a presentation on a portion, obviously not the water side, the meter side, because they don't feel that they have enough data to really give you an accurate depiction of any leakage or loss that we may be having from that. It's still sitting at, and it's all based on our records, about 9–10%, which is fairly low, but it's hard to believe that's what we're losing. And I'll give you a good example is a month or two ago, one of our large commercial meters that is located at the Central Southside Community Hospital had gone bad. And so we had to estimate that. And we have no idea once that meter went bad, how long and how much money, how many gallons of water were actually going through it. So, that's a big one that we caught by just going to read the meter, right? But we do not test. When we went from disk meters to octave meters, which is based on the flow through is how it's done instead of disk, we don't have anything to test these meters. We don't test them on a regular basis. And so what this would do is, we're not doing residential because the suggestion was we do all of them. I'm only bringing you if we to look at doing the larger meters, because I feel like if we're losing water, which means revenue, then it would be more detrimental at the commercial level size meters than it would be a residential size meter. And so what they will do is take these meters, put in other meters to verify if there is any loss in testing them, I should say. And so obviously that is an additional cost, but this cost would also be wrapped into if we went with the system of replacing all of our meters and going to whether it's a read that you drive by or it seamlessly we can see accurately all the time, which is AMI reading, then it would be incorporated over that time span in the savings that we receive. Just like the other, if we do the building, which they'll discuss next week. So this is an additional almost $25,000 for them to do this. But I do think that our water meters are something that we really should advance forward in. And we don't have good enough data right now for them to give us a true, accurate depiction of what we are potentially losing or not. So I'm asking that you allow me to amend, sign an addendum to the original agreement that we had with them from the building to do this additional study for the water meters. For the
commercial.
Larger meters, yes. Not residential meters.
I have a question about when they're putting in their test meters. If they're putting in these test meters, I don't know how that works. Can you tell me, just give me a quick synopsis of how it works and why we can't just put in something better instead of, in those big commercial ones, instead of putting in something to test? Because I don't know how that process works.
I wish I could. I can't give you the exact how that works. But if you want to wait till next week, they can probably explain that to you. And I don't think a week will make a difference. You can ask them that question of how that actually works. But I'm not positive about how the intricate details of that.
What does this put the total that would be absorbed if we went with the program?
I don't have the exact number, but it would put it close to 60 grand.
So it's almost doubling the amount of money that we put out for them because wasn't it around 28 or 30 for the initial assessment?
I think the original, Julie, do you know off the top of your head what that original amount was? It was close to 30. 32,
I thought it was 32 or 34.
Yeah,
And
something
this
like
is
that. That's why I
27,
said
so
it'd be
yeah,
close
we're
to
at 60.
60,000.
But yes, definitely close to double.
So I fully support this. I want to modernize our systems completely. I really want to go forward with this. What I'm disappointed with is that this is a company that has come and portrayed themselves as having this experience in other towns and other locations doing this kind of assessment. And, one would hope that they came to us with all these eventualities or possibilities instead of learning after we've signed the original contract that we have to go back and double the money to get the actual data we need. Did we miss something?
I mean, I think they wanted to look at it. My understanding is they wanted to look at our data that we had from our billing, which does not show we don't do any testing of our meters, and that's where the downfall is that we can't say that those numbers are 100% accurate. They're just based on, like I told you, so if they're just looking at our billing, then they're looking at the other month when we had that issue for out at Central Southside, that's just a estimation on what the usage was. That's not a guarantee of what that. And so we have to estimate every time if there's been a leak or someone's, even if you use residential as an example, if someone's toilet has been running, we're doing an estimate. There is no testing actually of the meter to make sure it's accurate. So
I understand.
The data is not, they're not fully satisfied with the data to give us a strong enough opinion about which would be best. That's what I understand.
So we really can't blame them for it.
Well, okay, they are the consultants, and they are the professionals, and they are the ones selling us a service, our town a service. And so, yes, I do kind of get to hold them responsible for this. I just would wonder that, when people come forward and they want to propose a service for our town, that they have the answers and that there's maybe some wiggle room and they can say, these numbers are depending on the accuracy of the information your town can provide. I just assume that they've done this at other towns before and other places before, and they probably run into the same thing where the existing data isn't up to their standards. That's my only concern.
On a side comment, in the fact that you're referencing approximately 8 to 10% loss according to our records, that's really not a very accurate statement because we don't really have a way of knowing factually what we are losing, correct?
Just from what our billing records are. And then we estimate when there is a leak.
So in reality, our number could be, and I'm just throwing this out as an example, it could be 20%.
I don't know that it'd be that high, but yeah, I do think it's higher than 9 or 10.
Which may lead us to a bigger savings than what we anticipated to begin with. Not trying to get them off the hook, but there's an unknown there that nobody knows for sure.
But it just shows the point of we're losing, the method that we have now and how we're doing this is that we are still potentially losing revenue from the meters that we currently have and how they're done, read.
And since we know we're losing that much, is it really necessary to test, or should we really just look at getting an estimate on getting them all, upgrading? I mean, we know we're losing, money based on meters not acting like they should. Is it really necessary to test them right now, or is it an option to just say, okay, we know we need to do something, let's get it in the budget and go ahead and look at upgrading the meters and getting that done and create that revenue later?
I think I understand what you're saying, but with this method and them doing the work and putting them in, we don't put any upfront money out. They pay for themselves through our savings. So we wouldn't have to, the goal is that we're not gonna budget to do any replacement if we go with this, with ABM and their suggested method of choice, whether it's AMI or the read. I can't think of the other term.
The radio.
Yeah, for the drive-by. If we choose not to do any of this, remember, we do have to pay them out of pocket, and then we only have the information, and then we have to do something with that information.
Well, we don't,
ourselves.
and I understand that we don't have to pay them out of pocket for anything unless we sign the contract in the future to use their services. And it all gets rolled into that. I understand that. I mean, but if we don't use their services in the future, then we do have to pay them out of pocket the first 34 or 33 or 32 plus the 27 or whatever. And I'm not saying we're not going to use them. I'm not saying we are. I'm just trying to make sure everybody, we're all on the same page and understand that it's a cost no matter what.
But at some point, we still have to have information on what we're losing exactly. So somehow or another, we're gonna have to test meters to figure that out, whether it's them or we don't move any further with them on this, and somehow or another, we've gotta have more data to know what we're losing, to put in the accurate system.
Is this a relevant question? Remember when we had the big water leak? If we had this system in place, would we have known where that water leak was? Just out of curiosity, or is that just irrelevant?
That didn't deal with meters. That was an actual line.
I was just curious.
I can't tell you the exact answer for that, whether that would, this is all based on that that the meter, but I'm not sure about the line itself, if that was.
I know in our retreat, we focused a lot on asset management, and part of getting to asset management is understanding your assets. And so I think that this is at least a continuation of trying to understand where we are before we make any more decisions.
And like I said, if you feel more comfortable that the questions you have that I've not been able to fully answer for you, they'll be here next week anyway, to give you a review of what they have done on the building side, and so I'm sure that they would be able to answer these questions and hopefully give you some more detailed answers for like exactly how the process is done and those types of things. If you want to hold off on deciding anything about signing this or not till next week.
I think we knew that this was a potential. I feel like it was discussed when they were here that first time. Like they floated the idea that there was potential that we would have to Yeah, that was one of the things Tommy and I kind of bandied about. Yeah. So, all right. They'll be here next week, and a representative from Harper's will be here next week as well for further questions. Do we have any other questions at this time concerning that ABM contract amendment? Not hearing any. Town manager's report is next on the agenda.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you first to Jackie Vaughn, who I relied on heavily and asked her to lead the group and committee this year for the Fireworks After Dark. Our Public Works Department, our Police Department, Farmville Fire, Hampton-Sydney College, Volunteer Fire Department, all the sponsors that were so dedicated to this event, the committee, and definitely all those that joined us for celebrating our Independence Day a day early in downtown Farmville. But, you know, they put in a lot of work and hard work for our size community to make an event go off like that. And, you know, there's many communities that don't have anything to celebrate something like that. And for us to be able to do something, and I think it was quality, and I think it last year was the first year that we actually had it downtown after COVID for a few years, and before that transferring it to a new location. And we brought it in the heart of our community, not out in another county where we own land, but in our community to bring people here to our downtown. And I want to thank them for all the hard work that they put into this for people to come and enjoy 4 hours of family or whatever time they chose to have here. So thank them for that. I also do not traditionally brag. It's not me at by any point. And I'm not going to now, except that I did have a few goals, several goals when I took this job that I shared with council of that day and the current. And one of those was to be more financially sound and to receive certain accolades from outside agencies acknowledging that we were. And one of the things that really helped us move this forward over the last 3 years is allowing me to hire a finance director with the caliber that Julie is. And with her being here and putting financial policies in place and us doing best practices, I'm happy to announce that for the first time ever in the history of Farmville, that we have been awarded the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement in Excellence in Financial Reporting. And that is a very, that group is totally from outside the state of Virginia that reviewed our CAFR. Well, it's not a CAFR anymore, but I'm still going to call it a CAFR because I actually reached the point of being old in this job at some point, and then it changed it changed language. Those are peers of Julie's from outside that review this, and it has to meet certain criteria, and it just shows that our government agency has met those standards. And so I'm very proud of this team for being able to achieve that for this town. So thank you all for allowing us to do that and supporting us in that way. One other item I have is that there's a development happening in Prince Edward County off of Fairgrounds Road. It's called the Granite Falls Subdivision. It's a project that is bringing in I forget exactly how many housing developments, housing units in that area, but 10 to 12 of those, maybe not quite that many, actually are going to be in the town limits on the backside of that development. And our water and sewer ordinances state that if it is not adequately available, that I can go to the town council and ask for a waiver of hookup to town water and sewer. And so for this development, I would be bringing you an ordinance next week, or a resolution, I should say, next week, to allow me to do that waiver as the ordinance states, because it's where these units will be located, it's about 2,000 feet from any water access to the property. And sewer is about 3,500 feet from the nearest sewer line. And for the water, we would actually have to cross another person's piece of property to even carry that water line through to that development. So I'll be coming to you to ask for a waiver for those few residential units, of waiving them from having to connect with town water and sewer. So they'll have septic and well for those developments. Other than that, I don't have anything else this evening.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Davis?
Yeah, just real quick on the Granite Falls, hey, that sounds great. Is it a possibility of us, since it's just a few units there, is it a possibility of us going out and getting water and sewer for all of them, even though we have to deal with the crossing the property line, and see if they want town water and town sewer for the whole subdivision?
We've already had that discussion with the county. When they were doing this, we would have had to take a line down Fairgrounds Road. And the developer was not interested in the cost of bringing water and sewer down Fairgrounds Road. Yes, sir.
But they will still have other services like garbage pickup and whatever. The houses that are in Farmville.
That hasn't been approached to my knowledge at this point.
Do you have any other comments or questions from council at this time?
I'd just like to say thank you very much for your leadership and your finance director. I think you've done a great job with us being physically responsible with our finances, and I cannot thank either one of you or anyone else who's involved enough with the direction we're headed. And I think it's a major accomplishment, and it's quite a feat to be able to brag on.
I'm sorry, I'm going to touch on Jackie. That was the firework. Monday night was awesome. We had a blast. It was great. It was packed. The fireworks were fun, and we got out pretty quickly, and they got it all done. But everybody in after one storm and everybody out before the next one. And great job, everybody. Police department, everybody. That was fantastic.
Yes, I agree. There was many people who stopped me and wanted to thank the town for all the effort and bringing the community together. And it was, I was speaking with somebody the other day, and it's like after the lights of the fireworks fade, you're left with the bonds of like the relationships that you're building and forming in those community moments. And I found a lot of them in my time circling around downtown. It was a joy to see people, to be able to talk with them, share food with them, and fellowship, and just enjoy the independence of that day. So thank you to the town staff for all of your efforts in that endeavor, because I know you guys pour a lot into it. And yes, congratulations. I got the email about the the award from GFOA and immediately texted Scott, and he was like, Julie texted me 30 minutes ago, please don't, and knowing my propensity for shouting positives to the rooftop, he was like, please don't post anything yet. And I was like, I'm not gonna steal y'all's thunder, I'm gonna let it roll. But it's a really cool thing as somebody who personally sets, goals for themselves and then you accomplish them, to have y'all set these goals and to state them and then to go get them. I commend you. It's illustrative of your dedication, your hard work, your passion for what you do. And I think, to echo sentiment somebody else said, it should inspire confidence from our constituents that we have a local government that's dedicated to good governance and fiscal responsibility and being as transparent as they can. And so I really appreciate all y'all's efforts. With that said, it is an exciting time in Farmville. There are a lot going on. Y'all have some decisions to mull over for next week. It seems like repeatedly now we get these discussion points about what we want to do with Farmville. Where's it going to go? What's it going to look like in the future? And y'all get to make those decisions. And it's exciting to have them. You can look at it as obligations or you can look at them as opportunities. And you get the opportunity to make those decisions. And that's pretty good. I will most likely not be here next week as I will be out of town for a work conflict. So Mr. Reed will serve in my stead and ably do so. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.